Welcome to the lABLEd podcast, a show about disability, illness and difference. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Alice. And that's Lola.
Kaleidoscope identity, and this is who I'm meant to be. I'm just labelled me. I'm just labelled me.
Don't forget, in this episode, I might swear, Lucy might cry, and you can check out details of the trigger warnings on our website.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the lABLEd podcast with me, Alice, and Lucy.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? I'm a little bit more awake than I was the last time you spoke to me. I've had a good night's sleep. Everything's fine, and I've had a cup of tea, so we can start the day
Yes.
right. Yes.
Yeah, there is no sense out of me unless I've had coffee first.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Good.
I am back on after my medication review, which I was obviously late, and so it meant that I ran out of medication. I am now back on my pain meds for my back, and it makes me feel like a functioning human being again. So,
Did anybody tell you we're a disability podcast?
we've got a guest with us today.
We have, yes.
Yes.
It's not just basically talking about ailments and aches and pains.
No, we're not that kind of disability podcast.
No.
So I'm really excited to have our guest with us today. For those of you who have been listening for a long time, or who are have dived into the depths of our earliest episodes.
Yeah, started from the beginning.
Yeah, you may remember many years ago we had two young men named Tom and Jack joining us on the podcast, who were co-hosts of I now believe the sadly deceased podcast Challenging Behaviours.
Yeah.
Which was a really cool podcast all about quote unquote challenging behaviours and people with disabilities who are often labelled with that. It was it was one of the first disability podcasts I started listening to, and I really liked it. And Tom's mum is with us today.
Not that we're struggling for guests or anything.
No, Tom's mum is joining us today because she is a respected disability advocate in her own right. Dr. Sara Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Tom's mum, and I'm actually a professor at Manchester Met University, and my research focuses on people with learning disabilities and autistic people.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so
today,
much
Sarah.
for joining us. It's great to have you on. It sounds like very fascinating work that you do, Sarah. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into this profession?
Yeah, I got into this profession when I went back to university when I was 28. I went originally and pulled out. And then I went back to study sociology, and that coincided with my son, Connor, who was about 2 at the time, being diagnosed with learning disabilities. And so that sort of snowballed, really, that I just took every opportunity I could in doing an undergraduate degree, and then went on to do a PhD about being the mother of a young person with learning disabilities. And yeah, it went from there, really.
As somebody with an almost 3-year-old, I cannot, and who dropped out of a PhD because I wasn't able to, 10 years before I became a parent, and I was like, this is too much. I cannot imagine having a 2-year-old and going back to university. It's was obviously you were really passionate about.
Yeah, it was funny actually, because I can remember I used to travel to the lectures, get the kids looked after, all the rest of it, and I'd arrive at a lecture, and the lecturer would sort of say, "Oh, let's have a break for 10 minutes," and I'd be like, all the other students would be great, off we go, and I'd just be sitting there thinking, "Fucking hell, what do you mean a break?" So I remember that. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but I got into the habit, which I still do, of working sort of like in the evenings, really.
Yeah.
6 till about 9. And I still do that now. I sort of tend to sort of like duck out a bit midday.
Yeah.
then return to it. And I like that. It suits me, that sort of working.
I think everybody's got their own like hours where they're most productive. For me, it's like in the morning, so like from like 9 till about dinner time. After dinner, I'm flagging, I'm running out of steam. I can genuinely feel it like, and there are days where I often say to my mum, like, I'm losing. I can feel myself losing focus. So I think like I try and get as much stuff done in the morning, and then go. Can we go and have some coffee and cake somewhere, please? And then I sit down with a book. But yeah, it's amazing how you sort of fall into a routine, isn't it? Really, with things like that.
I think you do I think if you've got that passion and commitment to it, you do. You just find the way, don't you? Really.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about kind of your research and the direction that's been taking over the years?
Oh, that's interesting because I've just had a book published, which is sort of, so my research was once I managed to get my own funding, because then you can do the research you want to do. Did a lot of other research in the past that was my job, do this.
Yeah.
And then I managed to be successful in getting my own funding. So I did a research project about people with learning disabilities growing older. And I found that nobody thinks about people with learning disabilities growing older. There's no retirement, there's no change in life. You're still going to bingo and bowl.
Yeah.
Your life remains the same from 20 to, if you're lucky enough to live to an older age. And then another project on flourishing lives about the importance of doing the things we value, which is a very basic idea, but opened up this sense that we've all got things we really love to do, like a cup of tea in our favourite mug, or singing in the kitchen, or one person likes smelling their dog's head. So there's all these things we love to do, and having the opportunity to do those makes us feel good. But for people with learning disabilities, A, we don't often know what they love doing, and B, they're not supported to do those. Which leads to impoverished lives. So that was quite important. But then I was asked to write a book about health inequalities by lABLEd, an academic publisher. And so I was doing all this reading last year. And the more I read about published research, not just in this country, but everywhere, the more I sort of thought that I sort of moved towards the Engels idea that people are experiencing social murder. And that seemed quite a savage conclusion and quite sort of like bleak.
Yeah.
Because of everything I read, because Engels argued that if you know what causes the premature deaths of people and you do nothing about it, if you don't change those conditions that lead to those deaths, it's called social murder. And everything I read suggested we know why people with learning disabilities are dying 20 to 30 years on average before other people. And people with learning disabilities is not an illness.
No.
It's not a medical condition, it's a label. And people with learning disabilities are dying from things like scabies or constipation, like my son drowned in a hospital bath. I mean, these are obscene causes of death which should never happen to anybody. And yet it's fine. This is what happens, and we do nothing about it. Nothing's changed. I published a book, came out about a month ago, and it's actually got social murder in the title, which was a big surprise to me because I thought the publishers would say, or the editors would sort of say, you can't say that. It's too extreme.
So did you come up with the title, or did they suggest the title?
So it changed. What I was contracted to write, I didn't really write. So I just, because I couldn't, because the evidence was too strong. So I came up with a title called Critical Learning Disabilities and Critical Health. What is it called? I've got it here.
It's all right. It's very early. It's Friday, We'll let you off.
It took me a year to write it. Critical Health and Learning Disabilities, an Exploration of Erasure and Social Murder. So I feel like my work's reached a point where I'm just sort of saying enough is enough.
Yeah. And also, that title makes you sit up when you read it. When you see the front of the book, it makes you sit up and go, "Oh, hang on, let's think about this."
I thought this. So I've done work. Like one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on, Sarah, is because this is the sort of area that I'm a real work geek about. So my job, sort of my proper day job, is advocacy, and I've been in care homes and I've been on death reviews and all sorts of really difficult things, and I've always thought health inequalities is such a like wet, like unimpactful, damp, useless word. It
Yeah.
means nothing. It doesn't tell you that health inequalities mean that people die. It means that people are dying because we're not doing what the bare minimum that we should be doing. What we're doing for everybody else. That's the thing that it really fills me with a real rage. And there's so much, I see so much talk out there about people talking about, you know, trying to address health inequalities, and you do see some fantastic work happening. You know, I've been in organisations, I've worked alongside NHS trusts where they are really actively working to try and make what seems like a really small change, but that does make a difference to supporting people who perhaps don't have a voice, to be able to speak up for themselves and identify their own health concerns and get that kind of support. But when you hear the stories of exactly, like I will never forget the story of was he 36-year-old man who died of chronic constipation.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Just how on earth can it be 2020 something and we've got people dying of constipation? That's medieval.
Yeah, I agree.
And how did somebody not recognise that before it got to that situation? It's very easy to recognise, isn't it? You know,
I know.
you would think it was very well. I will rephrase that. You would think it would be very easy to recognise. Is he all right?
You would
You know?
hope that, you know, people who are living in care settings, people who have got infrastructure around them, people who are seeing them every day, even if they're not able to communicate verbally or the ways that we kind of traditionally communicate with people, you would think that they would have care staff who know them well enough and are attentive enough to
who are involved in their routine to go, actually, that's
has
not
anybody
happened.
noticed? Yeah, exactly. And like, no, you know, and absolutely not all care staff. Like there are some incredible carers out there, and I think actually there's a lot of incredible carers out there. I think the system is the problem for most people, because most care staff are overworked, and so their ability to have attention to detail is not there. But yeah.
But the young man you're talking about at his inquest, there was evidence that he looked 9 months pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so it was visible.
Yeah.
And it's like you stop seeing. You just don't see a person, so you just don't see that there's those obvious symptoms.
And you wonder whether it's because nobody really wants to raise it or mention it because of what it is. It's constipation, it's going to the toilet. Whether nobody really wants to say anything because it's like, it's a... what's the phrase I'm looking for? Like,
it's a little bit of a taboo, but I think you're
taboo.
I think you're right, but for the wrong reasons. I don't think it's people aren't mentioning, because it's not just constipation. People aren't mentioning these things because it's people with learning disabilities.
Yeah.
That's why that stuff's not being brought up. It's not because of the nature of the condition, of the thing that results in their death.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the book I sort of, and I was very vague about this, and I'm just beginning to write about it now, but I sort of came to the conclusion that there's this, what I've called a loose collective of people who contribute to the enduring impoverishment of people's lives. And that collective can include like health and social care professionals, judges, coroners, policymakers, politicians. Everybody and anybody can be in this loose collective. But the point is that some people in that collective know, and some people don't know what they should know. Some people know and they do nothing. And so the sort of like what I'm trying to get at, and some people can go into the collective for a bit, like a parent might join the collective if, for example, their adult child starts to want to have sex with somebody and the door's slammed shut then, because you're not going to go there and have any sort of sexual intimacy.
No.
So they join this collective for a bit. But the point is that there's some people in the collective who are totally unaware of what's going on. And this happened with Connor, that a lot of people got in touch and said, well, we just assumed people with learning disabilities led good lives and were supported. So they don't know. So it's about awakening members of that collective from their slumber, as it were, shaking them awake. You're not going to wake everybody up, because some people are rigidly devoted to the idea that people with learning disabilities are just a burden and they do nothing, they contribute nothing.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who should know better, and once they know, they can like come out of the collective and become an ally. And that's the aim, isn't it? Is to sort of like make that collective smaller and build up the allies and the advocates to support people to lead better lives.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've found doing this show and doing the work that I do over the year when talking about allies is that most of the people who are allies, they become allies because of a personal experience or a personal connection.
Yeah.
You know, and I worked for small charity for people with learning disabilities and autism, and there was a lot of people on that team who had a connection to disability in some way, and there were a lot of people on that team who didn't have a sort of a tangible connection and who just cared. And I think the thing that I always find sort of something that I've always kind of wanted to explore and understand a bit more is how there are people who don't, you know, I can understand if you have a connection, what brings you to becoming an ally and becoming an advocate, if you've got that connection. But what I can't, I don't necessarily understand the people who don't have that connection.
No,
and I don't mean I don't understand why they're there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing that they're there. I don't understand why there aren't more of them. What is it that makes somebody an ally because they go, hang on a minute, this isn't good enough, versus everybody else? And I guess the point I'm making is I can't understand how you can be working as a health or social care professional with anybody with learning disabilities and not see that inequality and then become one of those allies who's an ally because of an experience or a connection.
Yeah, that's so true, because there's all the way along there's people who without a personal connection, like you say, who are so, they just get it,
Yeah.
act, do the right thing, they shout about it. You sort of think, yeah, how are you like that when all these people who've been through years of training, years of education, years of experience on the job still won't recognise 9 months?
And when you meet those people that just get it, as a disabled person myself, it often like takes me back a bit, because I have spent so much of my life going, can't you see, and they're going, well, yeah, I can kind of empathize. But then when you meet somebody who just totally gets it and goes, no, I'm with you, I understand, you're like, oh like you don't know what to do with yourself, do you really? It's like, oh.
You even see it sort of within the disabled community, because there are some disability advocates who are like, my thing, this is, you know, I'm going to talk to you about my thing.
Yeah.
And then I'll come along and be like, oh, well, I'm blind and Lucy's a wheelchair user. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
how can you have a podcast together? Like, why don't you have a blind podcast and you have a wheelchair podcast? And it's, and it is, it's that how
people have often said to me, like, oh, so do you just talk about blindness and mobility issues, or they've asked me what disabilities do you talk about, and I'm like, all of them. If you've
but that also makes it sound like we're like collecting disability Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
Like,
I've got a shiny one.
yeah, my Pikachu's only got one leg.
That's it.
Disabled Pokemon.
Somebody call the merchandise team, please.
But I think that's an interesting point you're raising, because I do talk about, and I feel like it's hard hat time for me, because I am quite critical of the disability community for excluding people with learning disabilities.
Yeah.
There with your social model, get rid of the barriers and everything's fine. And then I'm also really critical of researchers for doing the same research over and over again and finding out the same things and saying, oh, here's our recommendations, off we pop, nothing happens. But also researchers will, and I've given a few examples in the book, I didn't really want to pick on people, but people using language like, there was one, I'd got a chapter on food and eating, which is really interesting. But there's researchers write about self-feeders. I was like, oh yes, we did this research with self-feeders. And I'm like, what, like the rest of the population?
I was going to say, what, just people who eat?
Yeah. Believe you me, I'm a self eater, like feeder.
Yeah, I think being a self-feeder is part
of the problem.
It's part of my personal problem.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yet you just write these words. You literally write them down.
What is it that Alan Partridge says? It's like word salad.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
people plucking terms out of the air that mean nothing. It's like in the work that I do at work, we don't like the term disabled friendly because it means nothing. It's just empty. It's an empty word. Like, because you go, well, what's it doesn't tell me whether you're accessible. Doesn't tell me whether you've got a toilet. Just says,
it just says that somebody will wave and say hello nicely when you arrive. Never mind the fact that you can't get in the building. There's somebody standing up the 3 stairs looking down at you on your wheelchair going, lovely morning, isn't it?
I like your wheelchair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really interesting because there's a couple of young early career researchers doing their PhDs who've published papers where they're quite incensed, rightly so, saying, why are academics making up new words about the same thing or more complicated words while the old problems remain? And you end up with this sort of academic mastery where you're trying to come up with a new idea. But we know what the problems are. We don't need any new words. We don't need disabled friendly. We need change.
Yeah. And I think once you make the language more simple, so also as well at work, we don't like the term disabled toilet or disabled parking because there's nothing wrong with the parking space. The parking space isn't disabled or the toilet's not disabled. It's an accessible parking space and an accessible toilet. Once you simplify the language, everybody goes, oh, I know what you mean. I understand. You think if you make the language simple in the first place, surely that's a great leveler for everything else to then follow.
And I think, I genuinely believe that one of the things we should be doing in terms of basic education for children is educating them about, the way that we talk about society and the way that we talk about infrastructure and things like that. Because there's so much, quite often you have these kinds of conversations with people, people get very aggressive about saying it's woke and it's political correctness and things like that, and it's just, but I think you're exactly right, Lucy. I think that if you simplify things, it's not about being politically correct. It's about being clear and it's talking about things plainly and not couching them in language that is charged with other meaning, because that's the problem. So often I regularly speak to people who will talk to me about terms of phrase that they're like, well, you can't say that anymore. And I'm like, no, you can't say that anymore because it's offensive to people. And it may not be openly offensive, but it's, it is a phrase that has been co-opted or corrupted, through use. And so no, you can't say that anymore. Why are you lamenting the problem with the phrase that you think you should be able to use, rather than recognizing that actually it's inherently racist and that is more a bigger problem than you not being able to use your prized comment anymore?
That's true, because also I sort of feel like with children it's a response of the parents, because children can be very open, can't they, and sort of say to somebody who's disabled, why are you in a wheelchair? Or young children used to sort of ask me questions about, or say something to Connor. And if the parent sort of shushes them up and drags them off, it's a terrible message, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than sort of saying, Connor's Connor, he's a bit different in some ways, but...
Yeah, I was in a shop last week, and there was a little toddler. She must have been about maybe 1.5, 2, something like that. And I didn't really pay attention to it, but I heard her say, I want to go in that. And I thought, what is she talking like? I was like, is there those rides you get outside the supermarket? I was like, is she pointing at one of those? And then I realised, oh no, she's pointing at me. And the mother was like, you can't have a go just yet. And I'm like, no, she can't have a go at all. I'm not unless you give me a £5. It's around Primark.
it's and the thing is, that's not a if my son saw you and said, I want to go in that, I would say, well, I'm afraid you can't, because that's what Lucy uses instead of her legs.
Yeah, but
and
she
that
went,
would just be the end of the conversation.
This mother went, not now.
Yeah.
I was like, shall I come back
Why
in
is-
25 minutes or something?
Yeah, why is that a difficult thing to and again, it's that people are so afraid to say things. When I was working at the last place I was working at, I was working with a lot of people with learning disabilities and autism, and I would regularly be asked a question that if any non-disabled person over the age of 17 asked it to me, I would tell them to get in the fucking bin. But I would regularly be asked, well, can you see me? How much can you see?
Yeah.
And my feelings are that if you are a child or you have a learning disability or autism, and it means that perhaps you haven't processed information or you haven't learned something yet, then I have no problems with you asking me that question and me explaining to you that actually my general response is, well, I can see some things, but I can't see everything. But actually the important thing is that, I have people around me who support me, and no. But if any non-disabled grown ass person says something like that to me, I'm like, how dare you ask me that personal question? It's none of your business.
Yeah.
And I think, because I think that if you have the agency and the autonomy to be able to do the learning, then you don't get to ask the question, because you could have learned already.
Yes, exactly.
How do you get to this point as an adult?
Yeah.
And if you are a fully non-disabled 27-year-old and you don't know how to blow your nose, then there's a problem. This is on the same lines as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, why don't you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, because that's the thing. When you think about disability, many people think that, disability is a very common occurrence. It's in our neighborhoods, it's in our, workplaces. It's not unusual to find that somebody's got a disability, whether you can see it or not. And so, especially this day and age, it does make you wonder, how have you got to this point in life and not met somebody who's got a disability, and you feel the need to ask me that very personal question that's jarring.
That is where going back to my kind of original point, that is where the problem comes from, is that people are so focused on going, oh my God, like, look at this disabled person, and not social modeling it and going, well, the reason this person is why is this person excluded? What is this person's experience? And understanding that.
And it reminds me, do you remember, I can't remember the presenter's name, but Carrie Burnell.
Yes, the one who was on CBeebies. Yeah.
She's got
limb difference.
Limb difference, yeah. And there was an uproar because this lady on the telly got limb difference. And apparently it was, quote unquote, scaring my child. And, people were turning on her because it was disgusting. And I'm thinking, no. That small child knows no difference. At that age, they don't know.
CBeebies is like is preschool. It's under fives.
Under fives. They know, at that age, they know no different. They don't understand prejudice. So those complaints about Carrie were coming from the parents going, that's disgusting, get it off my telly, it's disgusting. Yeah. And it turned my stomach, because I thought, what a society are we living in where you go, ugh, it's horrible, get it away from me.
My husband really, really doesn't like spiders. He really doesn't like spiders. It's a real thing for him. And he is working really hard to not be freaked out by spiders in front of my child. Mm-hmm. And because he doesn't want my kid to have a thing about spiders.
No.
And that is what that is. That is adults going, oh, that's disgusting. Of course, that's why if you walk in a room and go, oh my God, that woman hasn't got an arm, your kid's going to be upset.
You're pointing it out and go, oh, okay, they're different from me, Mm-hmm. It's, Yeah, it did turn my stomach. I thought, what society are we actually living in? Because, I like to think that I am surrounded by people that it doesn't even cross their mind that I'm in a wheelchair or have a difference. And then when you hear about stories of the wider society going, that's horrible. No, like it fills me with upset. And because I think to myself, I am working so hard to quietly prove myself to not only me, but the rest of the world around me that it doesn't matter if I'm different or have struggles or difficulties. I can still be as successful as anybody else, whether they've got a disability or not. And when you hear people going, oh no, get it away from me, you think, oh, how much harder have I got to work? Because sometimes it's like wading through treacle.
And I think, if we can't, if a woman can't even be a TV presenter, then, you sort of think, what, you then hear stories like, the neglect that caused your son's death, Sarah. You think, no, like, it's sort of, I don't want to say it's not a surprise, but you sort of think, well, how could we expect any different if this is the standard, if this is the yardstick that we're holding society to?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think because there's the presenter on CBeebies now, isn't there, with Down syndrome?
Yes.
That's a sort of different thing because that young person is like cuddly and cute and smiley and intact, bodily intact sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so then there's this sort of other, quite an uncomfortable, I find that quite uncomfortable, that everybody's there like making a big deal about, oh, that's so cute. And you sort of, actually, it's a TV presenter. They're doing a job, doing a good job or an adequate job or a mediocre job, whatever it is. They shouldn't be like adulated because they're so cute.
Yeah.
So that is problematic. But yeah, I think I think coming back to the point about Connor, I mean, I suppose, yeah, I mean, Connor died 12 years ago, totally preventable death. I mean, he died in a hospital bath when he had diagnosed epilepsy, aged 18. I mean, even when I say that, I'm sort of like, how am I even saying these words? How can I say them? And I sort of like, I still don't understand how I could say that, how it's possible, like you say, in a so-called civilized society.
Yeah.
But actually, George Julian, who live tweeted Connor's inquest as the first inquest she tweeted, is at an inquest today of another person with learning disabilities. She has been to sort of 30 odd inquests over the last 12 years. And every single inquest she either writes about or she live tweets, I just feel like, oh, we've plumbed a new low here.
Yeah.
And there's always a new low, and it's just extraordinary.
I suppose for you must think each time, you must have a little bit of hope, whether that's been worn away over the years, but you must have a little bit of hope that surely now, the only, we've hit rock bottom, the only way is up kind of thing.
No.
And then you're like, oh no, here we go again.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I don't know. I sort of feel like through George's coverage of the inquest, there are clearly some coroners who now are much more enlightened, and she's gone back to inquest with the same coroner, and you get like it's all textbook, the same as happened to us. You get some expert witness who basically sort of says, oh, this person was going to die anyway and there's nothing to see here. But now some coroners who used to sort of say, okay, well, the expert spoke and that's it, now some coroners are sort of saying, well, that's not right, is it? That person looked like he was 9 months pregnant.
Saying things like, well, they would have died anyway. I think that is so disrespectful to the person that was supposedly meant to be in their care, because whether they were going to die anyway, that does not give them the excuse to go, well,
stop providing care.
It's sort of solved our problem. I think that is a disgraceful thing to say, because everybody should be able to pass away with dignity and with care around them, not in some horrific circumstance where they're frightened, because it's a preventable accident.
I was gonna say, it's not even about dignity.
No.
And I'm fairly certain we talked about this when Tom and Jack were on the show, but because that was coming towards the end of COVID, and this makes me think a lot about the do not resuscitate orders that were put on so many people with learning disabilities during COVID, because it was well, what value does this person have?
Yeah.
Anyway, and it's not. That's absolutely not anything to do with a decision about whether this person should be resuscitated or not. The question is about whether they'll survive the resuscitation.
Yeah.
It's not about their quality of life afterwards. How dare
no.
you pass that judgment?
It makes me so cross. And, you know, going back to the point you made, Sarah, about the disability community sort of being quite insular with themselves when it comes to sort of like advocacy and raising awareness for things, and it's very like, well, this is my issue, I don't really care about anybody else.
Yeah.
I like to think that, I mean, I went to a special school with all sorts of different learning difficulties, physical disabilities, that kind of thing, and I like to think that I am a champion for all those sorts of things. But it does make me again, as a disabled person, make me feel uncomfortable when you see people like campaigning for their own thing, and then we say, well, what about people with learning difficulties? And they're like, well, I don't really know much about it. Well, I think to myself, well, educate yourself.
Yeah.
Educate yourself. So during COVID, like, it was a really scary time for people like Alice and me. I mean, we set up a podcast just to take our minds off it, but it was, I was thinking about people with learning difficulties who are not having the ability to vocalize or advocate for themselves during that, when they go into hospital and they can't have support staff or care staff with them to say, actually, no, this is what needs to happen. And then the issue got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was almost like people with very severe disabilities that weren't necessarily learning difficulties, they were saying, oh, well, we could, if they die from COVID, they die from COVID almost. And nobody actually came out and said it like that, but that was the feeling that I was like, I can see your ableism showing a little bit there. And it got to the stage where I was getting so paranoid. I was like, I can't leave the house, because if I get COVID and I have to go to hospital without my mum there, if I've got like tubes up my nose, I can't speak, and they just look at me and go, we're turning the machine off. What does that mean? I'm going to die? I didn't leave the house for about 4 months, and when I did, I was like in the car, wouldn't get out of the car, and you just think it's all of these things, whether that affect disabled people, they affect all disabled people, not just me. And I don't understand why other disabled advocates don't understand it, because to me it's just, they go hand in hand. It's just simple. If it affects me, it's going to affect everybody.
Yeah, again,
like
that's
me.
why do you feel that and other people don't? That's that same question, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't understand it. I don't
understand it. But there's another sort of thing related to the DNRs, is that still people with learning disabilities who die early will often have learning disabilities, death on their death certificate. Who literally thinks this professional thinks and has the authority to say, oh, they died of learning disabilities. It's like, what the fuck is that? How can you die of learning disabilities?
It's not an illness.
How is this person older? Well, this person successfully lived for 25 years with their learning disability, and then like a cancer, it came back. Fucking sake.
But what's interesting is there keeps being research into this. I mean, Sheila Hollins in like 1999 or something wrote an article about death certificates and sort of said, well, we've got to stop putting learning disability on it 26 years ago or something. And yet nobody says, when it happens today, there is nobody. There must be the person who wrote it, the person who read it, the coroner, who looks at this certificate and doesn't sort of say, hang on a minute, come back.
Yeah,
can't say that.
Yeah, because you wouldn't put cerebral palsy on my death certificate necessarily, or
But you might.
blind, you know.
I was going to say they might. I think you find they might,
Well, yeah.
but
Yeah, you should.
but they shouldn't.
They should.
But they should not. That is because
No.
because also like to be particularly dark about this. How have you autopsied this person and gone, oh yeah, no, they died of a learning disability?
But they also had emphysema.
Yeah,
Or, like, do you know what I mean? But it was the learning.
Never mind the cancer I found all over their body.
Yeah, they've got
Yeah.
learning disability.
It was the cerebral palsy that got her in the end.
But then that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because of course, how many people have death certificates that say natural causes when it was anything but natural? And when during Connor's inquest, we'd had 2 years of the hospital saying they disclosed everything, which was a lie after a lie. And then a week into Connor's inquest, we went in the morning, and the coroner just sort of said, "Shut down, everybody out." It was like, what the hell is going on here? And it turns out that somebody died in the same bath as Connor about 5 or 6 years earlier.
Oh, Jesus
No
Christ.
way.
Nobody had sort of like revealed this. And then it turned out the same staff in the unit when Connor died were
Oh,
on duty that same day.
oh, Sarah.
And you sort of think, well, this guy he went into hospital involuntary, he had ECT treatment or whatever it's called. What's it
Yeah.
called?
The electric.
And then he sort of died in a bath, age 56, and the doctor who worked at the unit when Connor died just looked at his body and said natural causes, rang the coroner, natural causes. That's it, no investigation, no nothing. And so you sort of, how often does this happen? That ignorant, is it ignorance? How can you diagnose cancer? Like you say, how can you possibly diagnose illnesses and then turn around and say, well, that person who's literally just dropped dead or whatever.
And how can you just look at somebody and go, well, I know, I've got Superman eyes, I can see through this person, I know why they died? No, you can't.
And how can you stay quiet about that for 6 years?
Yeah.
When it's not like the minute it happened, they must have thought, oh,
Yeah.
happened again.
Oh God. Yeah. Oh God, Susan, it's happened again. Like,
And I honestly, that's another thing I bang on about in my book is bystanders. How could you? Let's say you're enlightened, which hopefully we are quite enlightened in this room. But how about the people who sort of like all those people on the edge who who see it and don't say anything?
It's what I always say about like if when it comes to like cerebral palsy awareness day and all that kind, they're just tokenistic really, but I always make a point of saying that we need people to be allies for disabled people, and it's going back to that original conversation of it's very hard to win people over to be an ally unless like Alice says, unless they've got a background or an experience of, oh yeah, my Auntie Susan's in a wheelchair, or my Auntie Susan's got autism, or whatever it may be. But it boggles my mind that people would just go, well, it's nothing to do with me, hands off, I'm not touching that. But it's like whistleblowing, isn't it? It takes a strong person to be a whistleblower and go, that's not right, you're not doing that right, I'm going to go and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
We had how did he describe himself, Rob? As a stand-up poet, I think is how he described himself. He's a sort of comic cum poet who was for many years was a psychiatric nurse and now does comedy and poetry workshops with inpatients on mental health wards and talks about his experience. And one of the things that he did reasonably early on in his career was whistleblow, and he talked to us a little bit about his experience continuing to work on that ward afterwards. And it was just, he was a pariah. And I just think, why is the whistleblower the person in trouble?
Yeah.
What about the people who allowed this to happen?
Yeah. And I think as well, like, nobody likes to not be liked, do they? There aren't many people that will go, I don't care, this is wrong, I don't care who turns against me. I think the general consensus is, but I won't say anything because, I don't want anybody I don't want to fall out with anybody. And I think that in itself is enough to put most people off, unfortunately.
What should make you more uncomfortable?
Exactly.
Your work colleagues not liking you, or you knowing that somebody died
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you could have prevented it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Like, how do you sleep at night? Like, this is a stupid phrase, but I genuinely, how do you go to work every day knowing that the people that you're having coffee with and the room that you're standing in, someone died in this room and you could have stopped it happening?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a academic called Josephine Sorokin who's just finished a PhD about, she looked at safeguarding reviews and interviewed staff about things like that. And she came up with this idea of she uses this crossing the line and how staff don't want to cross that line to say something, that line's something that you justify your non-action.
Yes.
No, this doesn't cross the line, but of course it does.
Of course it does. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't. It's a moral issue, isn't it? I think it just shows people where people's morals are, and but like I say, being a whistleblower it takes some guts to do it. But I think congratulations.
Exactly. I think you should. If somebody in my team came to me to whistleblow about something, I would be so proud of that person for having the guts to do that.
Because you could trust that person with anything you gave them, really. And I think it shows great character to be able to go, no. How did the people involved in the inquest find out about the same incident that happened years before? What triggered that? I mean,
I don't. I was sort of laughing, but not laughing because it's funny. Just like looking back, I just think, fucking hell. That was triggered by the responsible clinician who was in the firing line suddenly remembering that there was a report about it halfway through
it's
the
quite
inquest.
a big thing to forget, isn't it?
Yeah, as if you would ever forget that.
Yeah,
but then
no.
even more interesting, I suppose, in a horror, fascination, revulsion way, was that the coroner was taken aback, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we got to this stage, day 8 in the inquest or whatever, and we haven't heard about this, and we are talking about arch lever files packed, about files and files and files of evidence. So he then ordered a investigation into the death of Henry, he was called, after the inquest, and he got the police involved. And about probably 3 months later, I received a letter from the coroner saying, please find the police reports. No further action is required. And so I read the 2 reports. They interviewed the student nurse who was in the bathroom and the manager of the unit who was there on the day Connor died. And the student nurse said, well, I was sitting in the bathroom, as obviously somebody should have been with Connor. Henry was in the bath. He started to have a seizure. I pulled the plug out and called for help. And he said the manager turned up and told me to leave the bathroom. So I left the bathroom at that. And obviously Henry died. And then the manager's report says, well, I turned up after the ambulance.
Okay.
And the coroner just said,
Oh my
it's a long
God.
time ago, people's memories. And I'm just there thinking, again, this is the collective I'm talking about. You are in the collective right now because you're not having the guts, the integrity, the honesty to confront this issue that is clearly wrongdoing of some nature. And that was it. So
it almost feels like an episode of Line of Duty, doesn't it? And that by the end of episode 6, we'll find out who the bastard is. Do you know what I mean? It's it's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, isn't it? And yet again, there's not a problem. Nobody got in trouble for that.
No.
There was no sort of discipline of anyone.
No.
Yeah. How can that happen in all those different layers? The lack of disclosure, the lying, the cover up. Everything about that, Henry's death. Henry's lost in that. Henry had no relatives. Henry's just gone, and that is fine, and that must happen over and over and over again.
Yeah,
and it's that story to me. And you said the coroner says there's no further action. It's like, is that too much work for you? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
someone's died, someone's whole family is now just without that person.
It sort of makes you think, doesn't it? Like, oh, so have you not got questions? Because I'm telling you now, just by Sarah telling me like the synopsis of the letter, I'm like, hang on, well, what about the manager?
There you go, Lucy. We'll be coroners now. We'll do that one next. That's our next our next project.
We'll be like, whoa. What do you mean? Like, because like, isn't it natural to go? But I've got further questions.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Not, oh, well, yeah, okay then. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Job done.
Next one.
Well done. Let's all go and have a sandwich.
And nobody is asked. So that same doctor, it's just astonishing, isn't it? So she is allowed to just look at someone and say natural causes, and that's fine.
No, yeah,
there's no, not even there was no post-mortem. There was nothing.
Even just listening to you, Sarah, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what a mess. There's a mess everywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
What a mess.
Yeah, it's just awful. And that must have been so awful for your family to have to go through that. It's traumatic.
And just re-traumatizing you 3 months later with lack of action.
Yeah, the whole thing is.
Because you must have thought to yourself when they said, "Oh, we've discovered this happened again," like. Yeah. You know, you must have thought, oh, this is like the turning point. This is the breakthrough we needed, because it's proof that it's happened more than once. You must have thought, what a relief. And then to get that again, no further action, you'd have been like, what?
I know. It's sort of like, and that's the thing. It's, if you've got a learning disability, all those protections, the legal protections, human rights protections, they do not apply. All those systems in place, the coronial system, you have to investigate deaths that are unexpected.
Of course,
but not if the doctor says, well, it was natural causes. I've just had a quick peek.
Yeah, it's fine.
Did you look at?
What exactly were you looking at?
Yeah, this feels like maybe we should get a second opinion on this.
Yeah, but no, not at all.
I mean, I was telling my mum this morning, this is going completely off piece, but I was telling my mum this morning about another podcast I've been listening to, and it's about women in the Victorian era who were murderesses, and then looking at it with the modern day view of, did this person murder or not, kind of thing, because they were very nifty with the noose back in Victoria. They were like, oh, you did that, we're going to hang you, without a second thought. But so basically they were telling a story about this woman who her husbands would miraculously all of a sudden die, and she would get the insurance money, and the police were like, something's not right here. And then her stepson was murdered because he had an insurance policy put on his name, and they were like, yeah, something's definitely not right. They did an autopsy on her kitchen table and said he died of, like, I think it was like something like emphysema or something like that. And then somebody else said in the community said, no, I don't think that's right, and campaigned to get his body exhumed again. And when they exhumed his body, they found that he'd got arsenic. He'd been poisoned with arsenic, and so she hung because she'd obviously murdered the stepson. But that was done quickly. Apparently, his autopsy was done on the kitchen table, and they held the hearing in the pub next door. And the doctor came and looked at the body and was like, "Oh, yeah, that's fine." Like,
and that was in the Victorian times. Yeah. And yet, sort of flipping it on its head a little bit. All of this stuff in the last 12, 18 months about Lucy lABLEd, who was convicted of murdering tiny, unwell, premature babies, and they're now saying actually the information that was presented to court was taken out of context. The thing I remember hearing that was really striking when she was first convicted was that of all the children who had died, she was the only nurse who was on hand for all of those deaths. But then actually they looked at an independent panel looked again and basically said, because it's a neonatal ward with very, very poorly babies, that you could essentially say that for, if you kind of mix up the the collections of sort of different babies, that you could essentially say that for any nursing rota, is that for almost every nurse there is a collection of babies who have passed away that you could say, well, that's the only nurse that was present at, on every single death, because it's very, very poorly babies. And actually it is looking increasingly like it's consultants were doing weekly instead of daily ward rounds, that they were it was junior doctors who were not being like properly trained and supported. It was an hugely overworked nursing staff for tiny, vulnerable, unwell babies.
And yet every time I hear about Lucy Letby, all I can think about is those poor families, because everything's being raked up again and they're having to go through it all.
I mean, it's awful.
Awful.
But this is also, if all of this more recent stuff is true, and she did not kill those babies, she will never. She went to nursing school. She will never get her life back.
No,
she won't be able to walk down the street.
No,
she's so recognisable.
She will have to go into like witness protection or something, won't she?
Yeah. It's another life ruined by a system that was just failing patients. And then it's all the other people involved, and it's the same, going back to the things we were saying about whistleblowers. It's another fuck up of the system that is ruining people's lives, and there's just a few people floating at the top going like, just
everything's fine, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine.
And it's always them that kind of live to fight another day, or to lie another day.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like when Connor died and then his inquest and everything, we did a lot of campaigning, did a lot of reading of notes from NHS England and the NHS Trust involved and the Care Quality Commission, and it's so fascinating how it's the same senior figures floating around roles in the different organisation. They're all still in post, and they're all rewarded, heavily rewarded, like I say, while people at the bottom are just having their lives crushed, extinguished, ruined.
And you see as well, if those people move around, different jobs, you'll often see that the same thing happens, similar things happen, and it just shows that is not what it is, bad management, obviously, but it also shows you the measure of the person, measure of the person who is in charge, like their qualities as a human being, to go, I'll let that happen.
I think one of the most that story you told about the story around Henry's death, and how the student nurse said that the manager came in and told them to leave the bathroom. That is one of the most terrifying, innocuous phrases I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, leave the bathroom.
I really feel like that is going to stick. Like, I'm going to keep thinking about that very simple turn of phrase, and how it just feels so laden with just
intent, really, isn't it?
Intent and menace as well,
But also with Connor's death, there was 2 student nurses, and in the inquest it was clear they were told they were spending too much time with him, or they were having a good laugh with him, and they shouldn't do that because they had other things to do. There was only 4 patients there. And I sort of feel now still like that student nurse, when the police would have gone back to him and raised this death that had happened, years before. Imagine how it stayed with him. And then, of course, this is raised up. And I just feel those student nurses who were on duty when Connor died, I can't even imagine how they must feel.
It's all just an abuse of power, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's the people at the bottom who are the ones that suffer.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is a really, really depressing, heavy episode.
I've got a nice bit of news, which
let's round it off with a nice bit of news.
That little Tom Ryan you had on your podcast handed in his PhD yesterday.
Oh, fabulous!
Congratulations, Tom. That's amazing.
Please pass on our best wishes.
You'll have to make him come back on the show and talk to us again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bully him into it the way only a mother can.
But also his thesis was about siblings.
Oh,
that's
with learning
lovely.
disabilities and
Yeah.
humour, which is very cool.
yeah.
Oh, that's
that
nice.
is really
I
cool.
definitely want to have him back to talk about that. That sounds fantastic.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Sarah. It's been really lovely to talk to you, and thank you for sharing what must be a very traumatic thing to talk about. We really do appreciate it. It's been great to have you on. Where can people find you online if they want to sort of get in touch with you or
See what you're doing.
If
see
they
what
just
you're doing?
Google my name, Sarah without an H, Ryan, and Manchester Met, they'll find me there.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, we'll put all that information into our show notes as ever. So, if anybody wants to sort of find, dig
And your
you
book,
out.
your book
Yeah,
is
tell
out
us about your
now.
book.
Yeah. Book Critical Health and Learning Disabilities is out. You can buy it from online bookstores, and it's published by Routledge. But it's a good read, good
Wonderful.
anchoring read.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
I'll add it to the
Add it
the list of things.
Add it to Alice's rage pile.
I've 100% got a rage book pile, like books written by women who have been like sexually assaulted and all sorts of things like that. And it's every now and then I'll read 2 chapters and then I'm like, I need to read some like cozy murder or wizardy dragon fantasy to take my mind off of how awful the world really is.
You see, I will just round that conversation off, Alice, by saying I'm looking forward to listening to the Tony Robinson audiobook because he's written his first novel. So whilst you're rage reading, I'm there like in the bath listening to Tony Robinson. So yes, so thank you so much for your time today, Sarah. It's been really great to speak to you, and I hope we do keep in touch. It'd be lovely to keep in touch.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening and joining us today. I hope that instead of depressing you, this episode has filled you with a passionate rage and you're going to go out and change the world. If you want our support, let us know. Lucy and I have got plenty of weapons in our arsenal. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends. You can like and subscribe on your podcast players and across social media. We are at lABLEd. Lucy, do you want to tell people about our GoFundMe?
I can. We have a GoFundMe which goes towards helping the running costs of lABLEd Podcasts. You can find that on our website, www.labelledpodcast.co.uk, and you will also find a transcript of every episode we ever release available to download and read at your leisure. So go and do that.
Yes, and we will see you all for something completely different next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Shh. Don't wake Dora.
Thanks for listening to the lABLEd podcast. If you like the show, you can rate, review and subscribe, and you can follow us on social media at lABLEdPod.
This episode was edited by Adam Hall. Our music was by Maisie Crunden, and we'd like to thank the rest of the team involved.